Okay, now that we know how to use images and added an image up here, I want to show you guys how to add some background images. So on our body, we have a background color being applied. Let's change our wrapper down to like 50% so we can look at more of that screen, the background color here, right? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a background-image, and I'm going to put in here this URL, brackets or parentheses, quotations, the name of the file I want. And you can see here a little preview of this file. I'm going to add a little texture background to this. And you can see here I've added this background and it's started up in the top right-hand corner. Well, you can, if you want, you can add a background dash position, and maybe we want this background to start at the bottom, for example, right? And I can refresh that and it is nowhere to be seen. Bottom left. And there's the bottom there. You can also feed in percentages if you want. So I could say 50% and 0%. That might be behind. I actually got those backwards. Let's do a 0 and 50. Because it's on your x-axis and then your y-axis. So you can see it 0% and then 50. And so you can move that around. Let's get rid of that for right now and play with background repeat. Now, background repeat, by default, if you don't put that, goes to a repeat, and we'll repeat that throughout the page, and that's kind of what we're looking for. But you can also do a repeat X, and they'll go across the top, or repeat Y if you want it to go across the side, and you can see both of those. But let's just go for a repeat for what we're trying to do. Okay. Now, I have started to get a lot of different images collected up, and at times, I'll put this back here. At times I probably want to organize these a little bit better than I have. And so in here you can see I've got a bunch of files, my about, my index, my logo, or some logo, my style. And I want to put these into an images folder. So I'm going to call this images. And now I need to update my content in here to have that. So I'm going to do an images slash anywhere I'm referencing an image. And we'll use some of those here in a bit. And that goes as well as for my HTML. So I'm going to add that. Got this baby monkey we'll add in there. And that should be good. I'll go refresh that, and I've got my logo wrong. Spell it right. Images slash, oh, yeah, so the dumb problem is I never actually put anything in there. So I'm going to go ahead and move these all into images. Like so, okay? And it's just one way we can kind of clean up some of our files by putting everything inside of an images directory, and you can see now everything works fine again. Things are good there. So again, using relative links, we'll just put the folder name. If you end up putting the slash in front of that, that might denote the root of the server, so you've got to be quite careful sometimes with that. And so we're just going to put the folder name and then the file name afterwards, and that should work great. Okay, let me bump that back up to 80%. So this is a little bit wider. And I'm going to go ahead now, and underneath of our navigation, I'm going to add a div tag, and I'm going to add an ID to this, and I'm going to call this one hero image. And you can see over here inside my CSS, I've got nothing in this, and I could put some stuff in it later, and maybe I will, but for right now, I'm just going to leave it empty. And inside my CSS, you can see I've got a background image now that I'm going to apply. as well as a height of 300 pixels. So let me save both of those and refresh it, and you can see I've got an image showing up in here. Now this image is huge, and so I might want to change that background image size. So I'm going to do a background size, and let's do just, this is going to look horrible, 100 pixels by 100 pixels. And you can see there's that image, and it's like a little baby monkey, and it's being repeated. So I probably want to turn that repeat off. So I'm going to do a background dash repeat and do a no repeat. And we can see we've got that little image there. We can, again, within that space that's being chiseled out for us, we can play around again with the background dash position, and we could say something like a 50%, 50%. Okay, and we'll put that in the middle. Now I don't really like how small this is, and some people could do something like, you know, 100% by 100%, and that's going to look a little hokey because at times it's going to get stretched out. So you never ever want to stretch your images or smush them or things like that. So what we want to do is we want to fill this space, but we want to maintain our image aspect, okay? So the way we do that is we change our background size over to something called cover. And cover will look significantly better. The only difference between cover and what we had before is it will clip off some of that image. So you can see here where I'm on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, I am exposing, you know, some image over here and some image over here, or cutting it off. Okay, or here I'm cutting off the top or the bottom, and so it's going to make sure it's covering the space it needs to, but you might have some image loss. You can also do what's called a contain, and a contain will make sure the whole image is seen, but some of the space now is cut off. So you can see I've got sidebars over here that are not being filled, or above or below. And so for right now we're going to go with the cover, and I think that works best. Now the problem here is when I zoom in, I might lose some of the focus that I want. Or when I go really, really big, I might lose some of the focus I want. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the inspect, and I'm going to try to focus in on what part of the image I want to actually see. So I'm going to pull that here, and I'm going to take this 50%, and I'm going to go up and down. Okay, the 50 is fine. And this is my right, or there's my up and down. I want to make sure this little guy, you know, maybe some of the bottle looks perfect. So that 50 actually works really well. Let's make this smaller now and chop it here. And let's take this 50 here and let's adjust that so he's in the center. So wherever I am, you know, the monkey, or wherever size I am, the monkey is going to appear, you know, somewhere inside the screen where I want it to be. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, so go with that for now. So that's an 80-50, and so I can go back and change that to an 80-50 to make sure my code looks good. Now I've got some videos I'm going to probably post on each assignment that shows you how to use that inspect. Make sure to watch those, the bottom of each assignment, on how to use that appropriately. It's an excellent tool, and everybody should be using it. All right, another thing we can use, I'm going to go ahead and do another one like this. Okay, and I'm going to call this one fixed image. Okay, and underneath here, maybe underneath types, yeah, probably down there somewhere. Underneath types, I'm going to add another div, and we'll say ID equals fixed image. And fixed image, we're going to change this to be a selfie. And I can keep my height there the same, and I can keep my cover the same, and I can keep my background position. I can just take that off. I probably don't need that one. But this one, let me just show you what this is going to look like. Okay, so I've got an image here of a guy taking a selfie. It's this big image of this monkey taking a picture of himself. Okay, and what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to do a background attachment, and I'm not going to turn on scroll. I'm going to turn on one called fixed, and what that's going to do is it's going to take this image and it's going to put it on the background and allow me to, so the image won't move, but it'll kind of expose or mask what that is. And it's kind of a cool effect that you can add to a background image if you want to. And again, you can kind of see how that works. But you know, you could add a bunch of images if you wanted to and have it roll through a bunch of them. So I could put another one underneath it. And I can also, because this is a background image, I can write stuff on top, put content up there, whatever I want. But I thought it was kind of a cool example of a fixed image and how that might work if you wanted to do something like that for a project. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. We're going to keep the baby monkey up here. I think he's perfect size for that. There's some other things out here I wanted to show you guys. There's something called a background clip. Now if I have a content here where I have a background image applied, I can apply this background clip border box, and my image will extend out to the edges within the border. And you can see this is a dashed border where I can see that my image goes out into the border. I can also make it go out to the border itself, not into the border, but right, and basically fill the padding. And I can also take my image, my background image, and apply it just to the content itself. So if you want your background image to go out as far as the content, the padding, or the border itself, you can use a background clip to do so. Okay. There's another one called background origin, and this is going to set the background origin on where you know, is it going to start from the border start, inside the border, inside the padding. And you can see some examples here of if I'm going to have you know, some like a background image or an image or something, and you really honestly don't really use it that often. I'm not sure I ever have, but it is something out there. I also have some other examples here of that contain with no repeat, a cover, filling it. You can use percentages or pixels amount. And then the last thing I wanted to show an example of was using a background image, or sorry, multiple background images. So in this example here, I have these, I have two background images. I've got this thing of bubbles, and then I also have a logo. And, or actually, yeah, I have bubbles and a logo, and then I have a linear gradient, is what they're doing in this example here. Okay, and so I want you to notice who's stacking on who. I've got the first one seen is the one on top, then the second one would be the middle, and then the last would be the gradient. And so it lays down this gradient, it puts some bubbles here, and then throws a logo there. So you just use background image, and then you just kind of do them and just stack them how you want. And then if you want to use other things like our background repeat or position or size or different things like that, you can just do them the same, but just comma delimitate them. So in this case, you can see the first one, the logos and no repeat. If I was to change that to repeat, you'd see Firefox logos all over the place. You can see this one, background position. The first is going to be bottom right. Then we have left, and then we have right for the gradient going that direction. So you can stack background images on top of each other. Now, a couple items to note with this. One, you don't use alt tags with any of these, and you'll validate fine without using them for background images. Number two, a lot of students don't know when to use an image tag or a background image. And so what I typically say is that image active content? Like I've got an article and I've got some kind of figure or something to look at. You could click on it and it would bring up something. That is an appropriate use of a foreground image, active content, use the image tag. Now this, for example, I might want to take some white text and write some kind of call to action, you know, adopt a monkey, something like that in this space. And this image would be supporting content. And so because it has words on top of it and it's supporting what I'm doing, this better fits a background image, if that makes sense. And that's going to come up with a lot of students when they're building their own content and some of their own things. And so just kind of refer back to that. Is it active content or is it supporting content? And if you keep with that, you should be able to pick the correct, background image or image tags for what you're doing.